Hey, this is Jason Moss with the Georgia Manufacturing Alliance and Manufacturing News Network. Today we're going to be doing a member spotlight of a good friend, Miss Laura Madajewski. Laura and I have been friends and business colleagues for quite some time, and give you a little bit about her background. Laura is a CPA and principal and manufacturing and distribution supply chain leader at HLB Gross Collins. And beyond that, she has been a chapter director for GMA for several years and has run a phenomenal networking group at her office over in Cobb County. And we got a lot of fun stuff that we're going to talk about today. It has been a wild year. Would you agree, Laura?
Oh, that is the understatement of the century, Jason.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the key topics that we're going to try to get covered today. Is we're going to talk about the supply chain. You know, as I go around the state and talk to different industry leaders, you know, there's several things that pop up pretty consistently. Supply chain and the impact for customer fulfillment, man, that's a big issue. One of the other fun parts we're going to talk about is tax planning. Now, on the surface, it might not sound super fun to you, but I know for me, using that money for anything other than taxes is fun for me. So I want to keep as much of it as I can, and I'm sure you do as well. So Laura's going to give us some great insights on really tax planning, wrapping this year up and getting ready for 22, although we don't have all the answers or all the guidance yet about how taxes are going to shake out. We're going to talk about what we know so far, and then also about, you know, for me, one of the pieces on the business side that I've dealt with, but also many of our leaders have brought up is what to do with cash. You know, that's a big thing right now. You know, do you hold cash? How do you reinvest that? What are some of the solutions and options? And then workforce. Right. There is not a conversation that goes on at GMA that at some point doesn't connect back into workforce. So we got an industry expert that knows the space, that understands manufacturing and is passionate about helping people in that, and is a great supporter across the board. So, Laura, thank you for taking your time today to join us and give us some of your insights. But before we get into all those topics, what I'd like to do is I want our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. Tell us about Laura Madajewski and who you are, kind of how'd you get into this space?
Sure, absolutely, Jason. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, I was trying to think back this morning on how long we've known each other, and we're just going to say it's been a while. So I appreciate this opportunity so much to come on to Manufacturing News Network and chat a little bit this morning. So for me, my background, I am a Kennesaw State University grad, go Owls. And throughout that process, I really got to understand better what's going on out there in the marketplace, what's happening in our great state of Georgia alone, and what a large impact the manufacturing community has. So as I started getting into my professional career, I found just a real fascination that continued to grow with that and wanting to better understand and help businesses. So many of the businesses I work with, they're family-owned businesses, they're second or third generation. So they're bringing some really cool new ideas to the table. And it's just a chance for me to do a heck of a lot of listening and getting a chance to understand them and figure out what I can do to help them succeed as far as they want to go, which of course right now in this marketplace, things are just so crazy with everybody undergoing, sale and acquisition transactions. It just makes your head spin at this point in time, which ties a little bit into some of that investment stuff that you were talking about we're going to get to this morning. Right. But with all of that said, though, that's why I joined the team at HLB Gross Collins. I had a very fortunate opportunity to step in and lead the manufacturing and distribution practice. And I went through and I decided to kind of relabel it as manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain. Okay. Because I do feel, all three of those components are so critical to what we're looking at in the industry. And, you can't have one without having the other, so to speak, for, I think, true success. And whether it's your business that's actually, maybe doing all three of those things, or really, for me, it's about continuing to build those relationships. So networking, through groups like GMA, who have just been instrumental in helping me and my clients, and those in the great state of Georgia community. It just is a way for us to really get to make sure we know each other, and in these crazy times of crisis, be able to support each other through that. So I think all of that to say is that's kind of where I kind of came from. And originally I'm from up north, though. We won't get too much into that for those that are maybe feeling a little contentious about the Yankees. But I pick up the northern accent when I'm around family. But
Sure.
Otherwise, I've grown up here in the South. I came here to the state of Georgia in the mid 90s, right before the big Summer Olympics. And have just really kind of grown and thrived in our great state of Georgia and everything that we have going on here. The magical environment we have for manufacturers to put their feet down in the ground or take something that was already established and just make it their own is really, really cool and exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. And I really appreciate to have that perspective. When I set up GMA back almost 14 years ago, can you believe it, man? It's been a while. Yeah. Back in 2008, really focused on serving the manufacturing community and figuring out ways that we can help support and grow manufacturing across the state of Georgia. When I first kicked it off, I said, we're only going to have manufacturers, right? That's the only people that are going to come to the table. And it was really interesting to see how that sort of played out, because it's great to have that exclusive group and only serve one space and be very niche, and I get that piece. And I really wanted to drive into that. But what I found was our members needed so much more. So we opened it up to have non-manufacturers join the crowd. And man, that has really made such a huge impact on what I can bring to the table, because I've yet to find a successful manufacturing company that doesn't have a strong CPA firm backing them up, figuring out how to make sure that the numbers work, right? I mean, because they're good at making stuff, right? And some of them are pretty good in the accounting side of the world, but you got to have a team, and for us to be able to work together to find people that understand manufacturers, right? Not everybody does, and so having partners that we know that we can count on and we can refer people to that understand the industry, that we feel comfortable in connecting. Now, GMA doesn't endorse anybody. That's one of the things we learned to not get into early on. But we do know that we've got partners that we want to showcase and we want to highlight. That's kind of why I wanted to have you on, because I know you can bring what you're hearing from the manufacturers to the table. And not all firms have that knowledge or have that focus. And so it's really special for us to be able to have somebody that we bring to the table that we know that we can just, pitch questions out there and figure out the right answers. So so let's talk a little bit about this supply chain thing. I mean, all of us have seen all the boats parked out there in the ocean waiting to bring our Christmas goodies that are not going to get here on time.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're hearing from the manufacturers that you're serving on the impact of the challenges that we're facing in supply chain now.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And I swear, just this week alone, I've probably been to 3 different events where our great state of Georgia and its representatives and the various, economic development arms and transportation and things like that have been sharing, kind of a wrap up of their insights. So that's part of my job. I get to bring that forward to like today's event and to my clients, because what they're experiencing, of course, everybody's experiencing the same thing. So freight prices have gone through the roof. We'll get into workforce, the shortage is there. Figuring out if they decide they want to go ahead and invest. Some of them are investing in their own trucking fleets at this point versus trying to, wait and figure out things. Some people say it's a payroll shortage, or some people this. There's a lot of moving parts and factors to what's going on from that perspective. But what we're really seeing is people are continuing to shift more product through Savannah than ever before. Savannah is still sitting at number 4. I wouldn't be surprised if, next year we hit some sort of number 3 mark or even greater. But they have it down. When you've been to the port, you see what's going on down there. It is a well-oiled machine. and not to be knocking the West Coast, but what we're seeing here in the East Coast, yeah, there are boats that are starting to get out there, and nothing to the extent of what we're seeing out on the West Coast. I think what was the last time? It was like 65, 70 ships that are sitting out there.
Last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gone up and down, but it is capped over 110. I think was a high.
Yeah. So, there are some that are a little bit backlogged in Savannah, but they have a way of getting them in and out. So again, the containers are still the biggest factor, I think, in some of that, but the investment in warehousing and the other, initiatives that are going on there, I think are going to continue to help them lead the pack in that sense. So when we talk about what the manufacturer's concerns are, is how quickly can I get product off the ships and to me? When are they getting in? And if it's not by truck, then it's by rail. And right now, rail is having huge investments. Norfolk Southern is doing things there. Over the next 2 to 3 years, I think it was almost a year ago now that they were talking about it. I heard through a conversation with one of the local CIDs and one of the senators who's involved in that, the amount of dollars they're putting in that to expand because of the amount of containers you can put on rail. And getting it where it needs to be. So that and the sheer investment in transportation, so much of it right now throughout the state, outside of, we don't even know how many dollars we're going to get allocated from the infrastructure bill that passed back in September. That's still working its way through. But all of that to say that there are good things that are coming down the pipeline. There is a lot of investment. I mean, a ton of investment in our state because we're number one for the 8th year in a row in business. We want to keep holding that number. So people want to be here. And if anybody has a question, go out and take a look at the Georgia Department of Economic Development and what our governor is doing and the past governors have done. They're continuing to carry that forward, and the amount of investment we have here is wonderful. So all these components we're talking about when we say, what are the manufacturers discussing? What are the concerns? How to get product in? How quickly they can turn it around for customers? What price point are they having to do for that to still keep their customers, and customers are all knowing that, prices are going up. We're hearing it all over the place, inflation, things of that nature. So I think several of these investments are going to help really reap the rewards and allow maybe not such a sharp increase as we might be seeing other places across the country from that perspective. So
you bring up a great point. I mean, one of the things that we keep, of all the things that we can do, one of the nice things that most businesses, especially the manufacturers, feel confident in is the leadership that we have in our state. Again, regardless of what, we don't get into politics at GMA.
Correct.
Right? But what we can find is across the board, historically, the leadership in Georgia, we are blessed to have folks and have consistently brought people to the table that have a business-friendly mindset. That are especially in manufacturing. They understand the power of it. We're not having to fight like so many of the other states that I talk to. It's difficult. I mean, it's tough enough to fight the dragon that you're facing, but having them behind your back that's in your community fighting you, that's not good. So I think we're really blessed, and we got so many great things to be thankful for. There's challenges out there, obviously, but. But I'm so continually reminded by the leaders that I talk to that say, we're glad that we don't have to fight that too, right? And we've got people with the mindset to how can we make business better and make it more effective. When we took a tour, we've toured the port probably 2 or 3 times, and every time I go down there, I'm just fascinated with the technology and the way that people move stuff around. And man, I have a hard time keeping up with the groceries I put in a cart. These guys, picking and placing these containers that go all over the world. It's really cool. But but being able to see those folks, the leaders that are committed to growth and helping the business succeed, especially at the port, their investments in the future are paying off now, but I'm convinced that they're going to be paying off long term, and for generations to come. So I'm glad we got that piece, on our side for sure. So supply chain. I mean, it feels like it's not as bad as it was a couple months ago, or is that kind of the vibe you're getting?
Well, I think right now we're going through kind of a unique time in and of itself, as everybody was like, all the warnings were out there several months ago about if you want something for Christmas for it to be under the tree from Santa,
Right.
you should have probably ordered it weeks ago. It's interesting to still see, I think, just from the consumer perspective, what is still available out there, though there's a lot of it that comes with no guarantees as to, when you'll officially get it. I know I've ordered some
ship dates.
Exactly. And so I think from that perspective, when are we really going to see this puzzle that's just been thrown into pieces all over the place really like better fixed and working the way it did kind of the before, even though business has changed and it's not really going to go necessarily back to what it was before when we were all using the words normal or whatever. This is the new of now. I'm sure we're all sick of every single buzzword that's been used. Right. So I won't dive down that rabbit hole, but probably it's going to take us, at least another 3 or 4 quarters before we can really get ourselves ironed out. If I was a betting person, even though us accountants are fairly risk averse, that's what I'd say is probably by the end of 2022, maybe early 2023.
Yeah.
Just, people have changed the way they do things. And, that one consumer has a big ripple effect on everything, to all of these companies that we work with that we know, from packaging to, who makes the Clorox wipes over there, the batteries we need for the kids' toys, and then to the bigger companies that need the big machines to keep making like things like, the wipes and the laundry detergent, all of that stuff. You can't fix cars, what is it right now? I think the latest I have heard is from the trash company, like so many outside of workforce shortages, but they can't fix the trucks. So they're having to renting trucks. You've got people that are driving trucks that are not really necessarily familiar with those trucks that come in and they're trying to do their thing. And, you feel bad for them. But on the other hand, nobody wants to have stuff sitting around. So it's just, and it's because they can't get the parts to fix the existing ones.
Yep.
So, yeah. So it all, has that interchangeability. And I think if anything, I would say the word to use that is going to continue to be used and people are going to continue to fight against it is patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to be patient when you go to the restaurant. You got to be patient when you go to the grocery store. We got to be patient with some of those truck drivers that have been out there just hauling things, 365, 80 plus 100 plus hours, it's just crazy, though they have, limitations that they're, required to meet. But it's just all of those things, I think, together. So I think people, as much as there was a real glut of frustration going on, I think people are better understanding now and figuring out how to be more supportive and also get creative too. It goes back to the network and those relationships. Yep. When you run into a problem and you can't get something, go back to that group of people that you've gotten to know. That's why I encourage, every single business owner, that's out there that helped get to where they are today. All those people they knew, those people are going to come in handy. I tell you, I've never called on my network of people, called on you, called on every one of these people that I've got to know more than I have in the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And continue to add more people to it as well, because there's just a real driving need for that.
Right. And you got to serve at heart. I mean, that's one of the cool things I love about Henry and you is we need to make sure that we come to the table, especially through networking events and organizations and that sort of thing, come to the table, not particularly what can I get from the group, but how can I serve, right? You've mastered that piece is what can I do to make this better, and how can I help grow and help you be more successful? I written in a good book a long time ago. You got to figure out how to serve first, and those that do that have the mindset and see the results. Because it's not about what you know, but who you know, and I think even more importantly about who knows you.
Yes.
Because if you get your brand and your name and your information out, people can call on you. I mean, I just got what is the date? I got invited to speak on a panel. Got about 700 people coming to Atlanta for a big conference on supply chain, coming from all over the country, and they asked me to come sit on the panel and talk about the new legislation. I'm like, just so you know, I love to talk. You put me on the stage, that's my favorite spot, right?
Oh no, Jason, I didn't just meet you yesterday.
I'm a mile wide and about an inch deep. That's how this deal works. But I'll be glad to represent. And so what I ask them to say is so from your audience, what is it that what will they want to know from the manufacturing community as a whole? If you give me a dozen questions, I'll pitch them and bring you back the answers, but don't come to me with the expectation that I have all the knowledge, because I don't. And the guy was like, man, nobody's ever told me that before. Because usually it's kind of an ego thing to be able to get in front of the Wall Street Journal and all these cats that's going to be, doing all these interviews and stuff. And I'm like, I'll be glad to talk, but help me understand what you need, and we'll solve that problem. And how can I serve the community better? And so that is, the bigger you can build that network, especially now. You need to build it when you don't need it. If you need it now, you got to build it, for sure. But build it for generations to come. I mean, how can I find the right people to partner with, and how can I give to them? That's the magic. That's magic, I believe.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Well, and it's interesting because I think from that perspective, when people ask anymore, you mmust have some quiet time now so you can kind of regroup I'm like, no, I've tried about a million different ways to come up with the best response without it sounding just like, but we're kind of all on in our respective, categories all the time now. Things are different. And, it's just a regular cycle. So I joked with somebody, I says, well, I guess it's, kind of good job security or what have you, but it's really because if we're not out there just doing with each of the companies that are our bread and butter, our people, our clients, our customers, there are so many more that are looking for answers, that are finally making those choices and going, you know what, this sufficed here for what I needed to do. But look at what I've been able to do now, especially really kind of looking internally the past couple of years and going, I'm ready to make some changes because I know I want to do X, Y, Z. Right. So who do I surround myself with from that standpoint that knows that information, or if they don't know it, they know how to get it.
Right.
So,
Well, speaking of that, let's dig in a little bit on that. I read some studies recently about new business startups, that it is insane over the past year. And let's kind of connect those dots along with onshoring and bringing more people buying local rather than having so much dependency on outside supplies out of our country and out of our state. So what do you see in what trends are you seeing in that space as far as buying local and then new business startups? And maybe if they connect, cool, and if they don't, what's your vibe on that?
Honestly, they really do connect, Jason. They're very much hand in hand. So, we just had our, small business buy local all across the country push. This week was Giving Tuesday on Tuesday for businesses, and then it's the reminder, and it'll continue to be the reminder, I think, throughout the holiday season. But when we look at how those around us, the businesses that, maybe didn't survive, but those people they're entrepreneurs. We've never seen such a glut of entrepreneurs as we have now. The amount of new businesses that people have started, the applications for registrations, holy cow, speaking on that, what you just through the roof, which kind of ties into a little bit of that workforce side of things when we're trying to find people. They're out there wanting to create their business, but eventually they're going to need some people too. So, but everything always comes full circle. But with that, there are people and they're doing a really good job. They've taken to heart and are working closely with those that understand how to market and brand. So they can understand that if they make a strategic partnership over here and meet with so-and-so over there, I can get stuff here that I need as a crucial part of what I'm making over here. And then that person's going to share the message. And then my marketing efforts and how I'm getting out there and the creativity, the things we're even seeing, out there, I think from even the LinkedIn perspective, as much as social media, I could go on till the cows come home about what I really think on some of that, but we won't go down that hole. But I think from that standpoint, they're figuring out how to make that work better for them. So when I think about what I'm trying to buy, first and foremost, what comes to my mind is always, what can I do to support my local community? Mm-hmm. So, and I think many more people are having that mindset now, having gone through what we've gone through the past couple of years. Right. So will things change overnight? No, we've been talking about this for a while. We're in kind of the second administration of really sharing this message out there, but it's happening. Mm-hmm. So, and there are going to be some things that are coming down the pipeline from some of the new tax reform that is going to be shifting some of the benefits for activity overseas. And how is that going to best be handled? What can you tap into here in the States? What are people doing to build things here in the States that you're going to be able to take advantage of? I think the steel industry was probably one of the biggest ones that, it doesn't happen overnight that you restart, a steel plant to create product here. So, it takes a couple of years, and I'm no expert at it, but just speaking to people to get things like that going. So, but when we think about when these talks happen and where investment's going and what's going on, we're seeing patterns there. And I think more so, there's a lot more investment from the international side, because I work so heavily with international businesses that are creating their U.S. entities here because they know they can take advantage of so many of the resources here in the States to help make that product get out there to the marketplace that much faster. So it's really, really cool, exciting things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. I'm seeing onshoring come back in. I'm seeing new business start up. I mean, people are pretty stoked about that. And when they come to the table, they need to be able to find the resources, find the people, find the suppliers, find the partners.
Yep.
And that's where I think we as a community need to continue to bang the drum and work really hard together. It's double-edged sword. When business is good, people kind of back off on some of their outreach and their community support sometimes. And they're like, I'm too busy to go to this networking thing. But that's when you really need to pour it on, because, there are cycles in everything, and you need to make sure, like we started off talking about, you need to build it when you don't need it, so when you do need it, it's there, and you've got the relationships and that kind of thing. So I think it's really important that people don't take their eye off the ball on kind of what got them there and opened up those doors, that we got to make sure that we keep that going, especially during the good times. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so busy, I can't stop to go do this, but that pipeline kind of dry. What I've seen is it tends to dry up a little bit and makes it harder to restart. If you just keep the consistency and keep things going, then that tends to be a lot better result rather than starting and stopping all the time.
Absolutely, and certainly is anything from what we've seen from the international side of things kind of going away? No, I think people are just being more strategic with it. I think they're really thinking about it. I think companies that are overseas that have these U.S. investments, they're really revisiting what they can do best here, what they can take advantage of, and how to be most supportive of their customers. So is any one of my customers going to suddenly shift things over, or clients shift things overnight? No, they're not. I think, again, they've been working and they've been planning, and some of this has been going on for a while now from the planning standpoint to, really kind of get ahead of the game on this. So as we sort things out with supply chain and get things, organized, there are a lot of things that are kind of happening there that we're seeing the ripple effect. One of the biggest things on supply chain actually is a concept called ESG. Mm-hmm. Environmental, social, and governance. And that terminology has been around for a while, but everywhere you turn, it's on like the front page of, the newspaper now and the news stories. So speaking of how our business is kind of focusing behind the scenes and bringing in those customers and keeping things here locally and getting things sorted out, it's all about that. ESG means basically you understand your supply chain transparency. who are your partners throughout it? What are they doing? Because people are asking more questions now.
Yeah.
And they really want to understand how you do business. So when you can represent, I'm working with this company that has this mindset, that handles things this way, and this is how I've created that strategic partnership to help make my product of what I bring to the table for you that you've got out in the warehouse running and making things for day to day, then that's really important in there. So that concept, that those 3 letters aren't going to go away. Thank goodness, at least it's those letters that have replaced PPP. But there's a lot of people that are thinking maybe that wasn't going to impact me, but we're going to continue to hear more about that. So I think, supply chain transparency, when we talk about everything we've been talking about so far this morning, understanding who you're working with, where things are coming from, how things are happening. And it's not just about who's creating it and what's all those tangible things there, but how is that product getting to you through investments and things that so many businesses have been doing from a technology standpoint and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's just another component that we're kind of seeing. And when I look holistically as to what's on the tip of the tongue out there in the manufacturing space under supply chain.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Well, speaking of tip of the tongue, one of the pieces that we've been talking about and kind of touched on when we kick this thing off is some concepts on tax planning with should I say a little uncertainty in in our guidance from the folks that are writing all the rules, but tax planning. There's a couple things is maybe some ideas of what we can do before end of year, and then I have talked to manufacturers kind of fit in what I've found kind of 2 buckets. There wasn't many. There was a very small percentage of people that maintained. Mm-hmm. Most of the manufacturers that I've been engaged with have just exploded in their business. Yeah. A few have gone away. A small percentage have gone away. But the majority of them have exploded, and some of them are sitting on a big old fat wad of cash, right? I mean, gracefully said, right? but something like, well, what do I do with this? What are some of the things that we could do? There's always, capital investment things that we can do. But from your, from your experience, what are you seeing people having success with managing that cash, that available cash?
Sure, absolutely.
If they have some extra, right?
Exactly. So, because we are starting to see some of that disappear for what's going into investment for workforce development. So on that side, but so what we're seeing right now, you hit it on the nail on the head, capital investment. We're seeing people take their dollars and make them work for them through investment in new facilities. Okay. There's a lot of space that is still available out there, but it's kind of fast, especially here in the Southeast, really kind of fast dissipating in some of the areas. If you look along the major highways and things like that, you see new buildings and warehouses going up left and right. So people want to be closer, of course, from a freight perspective to that. So they are putting the dollars in there because you get deductions for investing in new and used equipment. Mm-hmm. So for facilities, when you're building facilities, I would say probably from just a fresh off kind of tax credit side of things. So I think we've heard a lot about those. And I know just recently we had Tri-Merit share some information, one of the other GMA strategic partners that we've worked with, and employee retention credit. That's one way that people have gotten a lot of cash. So they are sitting on cash and then they're trying to figure out how to go back and do it. Investment in expansion, investment in people. Yes. Those dollars can be accounted for from tax credits perspectives. Research and development continues to be a great one out there. There is going to be more onus from a reporting standpoint. So you really do want to be working with an outside strategic partner like, Tri-Merit or any one of the, fantastic capital, the credits companies that are out there doing that. In-house for us, we do some credits, but we prefer to work with some of our strategic partners just because you want to work with someone that knows what they're doing and is going to give you the defense, the auditable defense and the documentation for it, because it continues to be a very complex area. But that's another excellent one. And it does not mean that you're just out there with a recipe creating something from scratch. And part of the benefit of it is you're doing things boots on the ground here in the States.
Right.
If you got somebody overseas doing it, you can't take advantage of them because it needs to be dollars and wages here in the States.
I think there's a little bit of logic that was connected into that angle.
For sure. And then when you think about, some of the investments we've had then in like a technology perspective and equipment, what do you got to do with your team? You got to train them on those. So all of that, those are retraining credits.
Yep.
And that's another lucrative credit that you can get that takes those dollars and keeps them in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And then finally on the just another bigger one on the investment and facilities perspective is something that's called a cost segregation study. So it looks at this big old building that you'd have to depreciate it over a really long time and all these other different types of assets in there. Mm-hmm. And it recategorizes them based on this work study that they do and accelerates your depreciation. And you can take that as direct deductions down. You can basically increase the depreciation of your assets much faster.
Yeah.
And so all of those things to say that those are ways to keep dollars in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And then the cash, when you talk about reinvesting it, you're investing it into the equipment, into the buildings. And then the other huge investment I'm seeing outside of technology is in the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's
because
that's like the magic. If one of the main challenges that we're running into is workforce, there's a certain amount. I was talking to a couple of folks just this week about the challenges that we're facing in the workforce, and consistently they have been saying that it is not about the money. Mm-hmm. We've had 2 or 3 pay increases just to keep up with the community. But I think if you invest in people and their personal and professional development, I think that's going to be one of those things that really brings you out to be the place to go to work, right? I mean, that's one of the things that you can really differentiate your business as, what else is out in the competition. If you're covering college, one of the other pieces that we're seeing a lot of is we're seeing a lot of companies that are doing 100% benefit pay. For the employees, and some of them are paying for 100% of the family too.
Yes,
because that is a cost of doing business. But if that'll attract the right people to the table, it could be I'm sure that there's obviously some benefits of doing that. There's some costs attached to it, but are you seeing much of that?
Oh, I am because when we think about what is the excess cash and where are we going to be reapplying it outside of some of the big things I talked about, which some of those big things can be millions of dollars, big things, but yes, I think, working through my benefits connections that I have, we have business owners that are really looking at how they can put a leg up out there, because employees are asking all of these questions. It's not just, do I get health insurance and how much, it's what is my level of coverage? What are the other things that are in there? And included with that, which we'll see how this all flushes out from the individual and company perspective under the new tax reform that's coming through. We call it, there's a lot of 3-letter things that have been coming out, Jason. So the BBB, the Build Back Better Act, which probably will get signed sometime, right about New Year's Eve, and then just make all of our lives just so fun in January. But part of that talks about establishing better parameters around retirement plans. And there are businesses that still don't have maybe as robust a retirement plan, but people are thinking about what are they going to do in the future? And there were several people that pushed off and deferred things that they were going to have to start getting payments on that were allowed under the legislation that came through from COVID. But those are great ways for you to get the tax deduction on your side as a business owner. And then for the employees to see how you're investing in them. You have a profit sharing component to it, or, it does take a little bit more time and legwork, but we're seeing an uptick on employee stock ownership plans, businesses that maybe have really decided not to get involved in the whole M&A world right now. Right. So, when they can turn around and tell the employees, you are an owner in this company. I mean, that is pretty gosh darn cool. Mm-hmm. Those couple words have a lot of time and effort put into it beforehand. And we've done some work with some really, really big ones and some really unique ones. But that's another great way for businesses to look at that from that investment standpoint. So it's kind of becoming the norm now.
Right.
I'm not sure if that component is going to go away or not, because again, we're talking about trying to move forward and establish things that are going to be just kind of a part of the quote unquote blueprint of what it means to do business. And I do think that things like this are going to continue to be more prevalent. Employees are going to expect it. And they're not going to be maybe looking quite as much at, like you said, the salary standpoint. I think there's still, a competitive factor to that. But it's more about what else are they doing and what is the company culture like? Like, everybody got disconnected, and there are plenty of people that still are finding, that it works better for them to be working kind of remotely. But in the manufacturing space, that's been a real challenge. And so when people say, "Oh, when did you start getting back in person?" Gosh darn it all, we've been in person. From our perspective, and any one of the companies I work with, they've been in person, regardless maybe of whatever might be, local or national, kind of orders and shutdowns and things of that nature. So, but people want to know that you care, that you're engaged. And that's how we all kind of work better together. A little bit of my own kind of philosophy on that. So I do think that that's going to continue to be a large component that people are going to want to understand. How do people work together? How do those teams work? How does the business thrive in order for them to sign on the dotted line and say they want to be a part of that group?
Right. I mean, it's a total package.
It is. It's a different package.
Because if, somebody's comparing apples to apples, and one company's got full pay benefits, and investment for personal and professional development for the employees, and they have a pool set aside for that. If you invest in people, man, the return on that is forever. Whether they stay with you or not, they will always remember who helped them grow, and that's something that that's pretty impactful. So
it is.
Now we've talked about a bunch of stuff. What else? What are the other topics that you're hearing out there that our listeners need to think about before we wrap the year up? What are some of the other hot buttons we need to keep?
Well, I think the big word strategic planning is out there. Business owners are trying to make a lot of decisions as to what's going to happen. Several of them realize that in order for the best way to grow was through acquisitions and things of that nature. Companies that just were at a point where they just said, you know what, I think this is going to work better for us to do business this way. And so those have all been happening it's been on fire. So it's good. It's, for those businesses, and then the ones that you see that have decided to kind of just hand over the reins, you have those emotions for them. But all of that to say that the planning and how to do it. What do we do? They're sitting there going, I had some plans for the next 3 to 5, 10 years, and those just got blown out of the water because I made some decisions and because of COVID. So where do I go from here? How do I take the ideas and things that I want to do with my team? I've changed my whole internal team here. There's been a lot of that investment in people and the training. Quite a few people were able to go back to school remotely because businesses were investing in scholarship programs and things like that to help them out with that. So how do I take all these people now and make them work better for me for whatever my long-term goals are? Do I want to build this to a point where I'm ready to sell it in the next 5 years? I want to just finish having my mark on the world, and then I want this to, move on to the next person because I got some really cool ideas over here. Yeah. So we've been spending a lot of time helping them figure that out. And so I think that's going to continue to be on the tip of the tongue as we go into 2022, outside of whatever's going to come from all this new tax reform, that we'll have we think we'll have all of our answers by January, and then we'll start disseminating that. But it's people that are going to, I had a structure like this. I had a particular type of corporate structure. Here's all the different owners that I had. Or it could have just been a sole owner, and I'm ready to take on somebody else. So what does that look like? What does that impact look like? What do I need to do? And quite a bit of it is kind of next generation that, there's somebody that's getting to the point and that has long since kind of stepped away from the business, but the ownership is still sitting with them. Mm-hmm. But you got next generation that's out there, boots on the ground, making some really cool things happen. Well, we want for them to feel like they can take advantage of it from a tax planning perspective in the right way. So we need to look at changing some ownership and figuring out what is the best way to do that. Okay. And who do we need to bring to the table to make that happen? Right. So that's a big component, I think, that's coming, that has been on the kind of the radar, and is really going to continue to be on the radar when we talk about what's happening in the next year. How are we projecting out how business is doing? People are really kind of taking that blueprint they had and kind of blowing it out and figuring out, was it the right thing? And here's what I want to do, and how do I make that happen?
Right. Now, you personally, and then organizationally, are you guys, are y'all pretty proactive in prompting that? I'm sure you're invited to the table when somebody comes up with a genius idea that, hey, maybe I need to do some strategic planning. Are you guys helping facilitate that? Or are you working with organizations that do? Strategic planning facilitation is a whole nother ball game. I love going to do those, because you see people's just heads explode around the table like, never would have, when you gather people together on a clear goal, and you give them the opportunity to contribute and add their perspectives. It is so much fun, and it's so valuable. Every time I've ever sat through a strategic plan, no matter how I was involved with it, I love to see the end result, because when you connect those minds together, trying to figure out something that's kind of tough, it's cool to do. So two-part question is, one is, are you guys prompting, or are you pretty proactive in getting your customers to do that? And then how are you typically involved? Do you just have a seat at the table, or have you guys been helping these folks in that space? Yeah.
Sure. So, yes, we are, when because we, as so many of our other different partners in the world, I say all of us in the CPA world, I think we all like to play nice in the sandbox together. And so I think that's part of the tip of the tongue of a lot of conversations we have, and we do press upon. When we ask the question, when we do the tax planning, and we say, here's what we're thinking about, where can we put dollars towards? And there may be things going, I'm not sure. I'm not, not really. And those are always going to be around, but we do really try to encourage, let's sit down and have these conversations. We do think it's important, and does it mean that you revisit this plan every, 6 months or so, or however, I think you got to figure out that rhythm. So are we encouraging? Absolutely, we are, because I think it just gives everybody, and make sure everybody's like set in the same perspective, because it's not just that we're looking from the business perspective. We're looking holistically, and we're looking from the personal perspective, because so many of these businesses have pass-through setups. So it impacts them on their personal returns as to what's really going to be going on there. So, and I think that's the beauty of having that holistic relationship there. Then as for getting to the table, we are the ones that part of that group at the table. It's usually us there. We love to be as involved as we can be. Usually there is, some other type of, consultant that the business, depending on the size of the business, they may already have some advisors or things like that. Definitely legal is around the table. And at some point when it's needed, involving from the financial lending perspective as well, too, if that needs to be done there.
Is it legal, and can I afford it?
Exactly. So, and then, one of the other ones that's involved in there, from our consulting team perspective, that we do have as a part of our group, is the whole valuation side of it. Because when we talk about making ownership changes, you've got to understand, what is the business worth, or, even just when you're looking at possibly selling, or, what have you. Having a pulse point now, even though multiples are just all over the place, actually had some young students at KSU. I was teaching a couple of classes on Monday evening, and they asked me, what in the world is a multiple? And I was like, oh, well, how long do we really have? But, that's another strategic player that people are really working with, that we're very fortunate to have, because they need to understand everybody has an idea of what they're worth. And it's always probably going to be a lot higher than maybe what comes out to be, but you never know. In this market, there's surprises all over the place. Yeah. So that's another component there. But yeah, because as much as we're each involved, each of those pieces together, we're all able to actually even step away and really work side by side to help figure out what's the best answer here. So we love being around the table. We are typically around the table because each of those other people at the table has their piece that they're really good at. And we fit beautifully in that part there. There's a lot of emotion going on around there too. So we should have a psychologist or psychiatrist or something there. So, but I think that's one thing they never teach you in school, that you gotta understand that emotional side of things. Well, you have those basic classes, but I'm like, maybe we should all get like a psychology degree or something. So, you got the referees in house that, that help handle those things. So that makes it fun. So, but yeah, that's essentially it. Is that we're all sitting there, and we're definitely one of that team. And whether it takes a week or several weeks or several months, just depending on how quickly we need to move, we're walking away with a good game plan and action, so that everybody feels like they understand what the future looks like.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that sounds great, Laura. I really, really do appreciate your time today, and I want to leave folks with an action item. What is it that they need to do? For me, the piece I'm taking away from today is the organizations that have not done a strategic plan recently, have not reviewed it or updated it post-COVID. I think that would be, probably step one. What else would you recommend as action items for anybody that's listening on the financial side?
Sure. I'd say definitely, if you have not sat down and had a conversation with whoever your accounting, your finance team is, do that. There's some things that are coming down the pipeline next year, especially from a reporting standpoint. If you have to do things like audited financials and things like that regarding leases. That's a huge component in our world. It used to be revenue recognition. Now it's operating leases. So definitely you need to have that conversation, because there's a lot of moving parts out there, and they're going to help you figure it out. And certainly, as always, I say, if there's ever anybody that has a question that you feel like you're not getting answers on, reach out to Jason. He knows so many different people, and of course, always reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help. But I think you need to make sure to check that box, because it's going to give you a bit of peace of mind to understand really what's out there, because it's a constantly evolving market. And I'd say definitely, step back and take a holistic picture of everything that you've gone through these past couple of years. Look at all those successes. Make sure you're taking a moment to just kind of take a deep breath and look at all you've accomplished, and make sure you go back and kind of take a look at that list of people And if there's some people maybe you don't know out there that you know, or you've heard through the pipeline talking to somebody else, that they've said, gosh, this person's really been helpful to me in my network and my business development, make sure to get out there and get to know them. Put that coffee meeting on the calendar, or, as much as I know we're all sick of virtual things, but I think they still serve a purpose. Right. Make that happen. That's what I say. If you're talking about what that to-do list looks like, make sure to reach out to someone in your group that you haven't talked to for a while, or someone new that that you need to make a connection on. And then make sure you have those conversations from the financial perspective. Get to really understand where things are at, and be open to listening to those. And they're genuinely, truly invested in trying to help you be as best as you possibly can.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
That's kind of it.
Oh, I appreciate that. So if somebody needed to get a hold of you, wanted to pick your brain a little bit further than we've been able to do it on this session, what's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
Okay, well, certainly find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Or you can go to my firm's website, HLBgrosscollins.com, and you'll find me out there under the MDNS segment. And otherwise, Jason's always got my information handy. So if you've got Jason's and you don't have mine and you need it, then definitely do that. I pick up my text messages, my LinkedIn, my email all the time. pretty much kind of on 24/7, and I'm here to just help you.
Perfect. Well, that sounds great. Well, I'm going to put in the show notes below your email and your LinkedIn connection as well as your GMA profile. Always your GMA profile. But guys, it has been a fantastic day. Thank you so much for your time and for this great insights on everything on the financial side and more. And I appreciate your continued involvement and support and helping keeping the Cobb County group wide open. I'm constantly amazed at your success in that and really leading that group. And it means a lot. So thank you for your help in that space and for the time today. With that, we're going to sign off. It has been another great day at GMA, and we will talk to you guys soon.